We made this.
Welcome to another episode of Pick a Disc. I'm your host, Matt Latham, and this is the podcast where someone picks a disc for whatever reason they want to, and then we talk about it. And by what I mean by disc, I mean album, and the album in question is Buzz by the British pop band Steps. And the disc picker today is Addis, who's back for his second go at Pick a Disc. You might remember him from end of last year, talking about Dex's Midnight Runners. So, and we're here to talk about Steps and the British pop music of the early noughties, and just like the tropes and stuff, and the premise of the band, and what happened to them next, and the members and all. And there's a lot of interesting stuff that we talk about in the episode, and I look forward to you actually listening to it. So, and before I hit play on that, this is the bit, where I just say follow us on Twitter, Instagram, or the other one, Facebook, that's it, under Pick a Disc, and all sorts of other places. We have a Discord server, the Pick a Discord. You can find the link in the show notes, and you can go and talk to us on the Discord server just to say hello and tell us what you're listening to and who you're going to see live, because live music is back. Yay! Also, don't forget to like and subscribe on any other apps of choice if you're not listening to us on one of them. If you're listening on Good Pods or you use Good Pods, just share and give a rating, and then get me up back in the music charts again for the indie podcast. That's nice to see, and just celebrate the love and just tell people that we're great, or I'm great, or actually lie and say I'm really good. So opinion fraud and all that. So before I start muttering and mumbling to myself even further, I want to say thank you for listening, and let's go and speak to Addis. And we're live. No, we're not live. We're pre-recorded, or pre-recording. You're not listening to this live. I don't know why I said that. But I'm back with a returnee guest, and for my sins, it's that friend of mine called Addis. Hello, so Addis, how you doing?
Hello, Mr. Latham. That's a lovely intro. I like that. We're live. No, we're not. No.
I've been doing this for 73 episodes. Can you tell?
We're alive, so that's a good start. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm going to do another thing that I've started doing, which I really shouldn't do in an audio medium, is comment on something I can see on a video. But it's something that's going to be relevant a bit later. But I've noticed you've got your Frank Turner Union Chapel gig poster on the wall behind you in frame.
I do, yeah. Yes.
Yes. Frank Turner, an artist that's mentioned a few times, had an episode on him. He's going to come up again in something I want to bring up a bit later, but when we talk about some of the live stuff. But because we're talking about a band, I think we briefly mentioned them when you appeared on Dex's, and it's band/group or whatever that pretty much whenever anyone who knows you are not going to be surprised in the slightest about who we're going to talk about. I think it's a big key part of your musical identity, and
it is, yes, yeah. And I'm with you. I probably wouldn't say band. I would say group as well. I think that's a fair account of them.
Yeah, but I mean, if you listen to this already, you've seen the name of the episode, you've seen the artwork. So let's just cut the tension and reveal, Mr. Addis. Please tell lovely listeners the disc that you've picked for us to talk about today.
We are having a listen to the third Steps album, Buzz.
Yes, Buzz. And weirdly enough, Buzz actually was talked about briefly on a podcast I was listening to this week. Actually, there was not the whole thing. It was referenced because the Hits Don't Lie podcast were talking about guilty pleasures, and it's US based podcast. And one of the hosts, Erin, was saying that it's a very kind of obscure song in the US, but one of the guilty pleasures was "Better the Devil You Know" cover by Steps. So, but we'll talk about a bit of that later on. But I just kind of find it weird that just gearing up to record this. This is just the start of September. You'll be hearing this in late October, so recording this ahead of time. So at the time, I was just like, oh, okay, that's really weird that I'm going to be talking about that album, and the podcast has just brought it up randomly. But Steps.
Not something that pops up a lot either.
Yes. So, why have you picked Buzz to talk about?
Why have I chosen this? Well, I believe we had a conversation, and we were talking about some of my favourite albums and things that a kind of a little bit out there. And we mentioned that actually Buzz is about to turn 20 years old, which is slightly shocking because I still think of it as, that recent Steps album. Yeah, so that's why we're going to talk about this one, because it's now 20. It's almost old enough to have a beer in America.
It's actually 21 years because it was released on the 30th of October 2000, and this will
there
be.
We go, then.
It's probably a few days from when this will get released. This episode, so yeah, it's 21. So
21. It can go and have a beer, right? So if you're in America, take your copy of Buzz to the pub with you, or to the bar with you, and get it a nice drink.
Yes, just make sure that you do rip it to MP3, just in case you do something stupid like dunk it in your beer. So.
I'll be surprised if anybody that owns a CD has not already ripped it to MP3 by this point.
Indeed. So why Buzz? Why Buzz and not any of the other albums?
Well, and this was a quote or a question that you put to me last time, and I said that Steps had a new album coming out, and it would take a lot to beat it. And actually, I think it has. I think it has beat it.
Is this when the Future Holds Part 2, or is that?
What the Future Holds Part 1. Part 2 hasn't come out as of yet. It will have done by the time this is released. I think we're about a week away from release, in fact, at this point. But Buzz has been was my favourite Steps album for many, many years. And I think it sounds a bit odd saying this, but it's a bit more mature than their first two efforts. A bit more mature. And it's just full of classics. It's full of brilliant songs.
When I was looking into it, when I was kind of looking into the album itself, I was trying to figure out. So this was in 2000. So at the time, they've been out for several years. I think S Club 7 was out at that point. I can't remember.
Yeah, they'd probably ripped off Steps by that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Their first album, the S Club album, was released about a year before, which was 1990, and I think their second one, which was 7. Was released only actually on the 12th of June. So, yeah, so there's only 6 months in between those albums. That's kind of, but then again, if you think about how much of a machine we're behind S Club 7 at that point. But I'm listening to, there's an S-Pod thing, which is a podcast dedicated to going through every single episode of the S Club 7 TV shows. And one of the things that come up on there was that they were marketed towards children, and sometimes it felt as if, the TV show aside, it felt really weird that the songs they were singing were aimed towards a much younger audience than perhaps Steps were at that point. And it felt as if, I think Steps had kind of grown up with its audience at that point. So the younger, like tweens at that point, were kind of becoming teenagers, and they were trying to perhaps grow with the audience.
Yeah, I guess a little bit with that. I mean, it's definitely got a bit. I don't think really any of the Steps stuff was marketed purely at children, album-wise, music-wise. Obviously, a lot of merch was, but I don't think any of the albums were just like, this is purely for children. This is where it goes. And I'm sure I read an interview with them recently where they were talking about how on their recent tours they've got like 4 generations in one family of fans, kids are coming, grandparents are coming, it was pure, innocent, easy music, which is always nice.
Yeah, but I don't think you'd get a Steps TV show in the same vein as like Miami 7 or anything. It seems like a weird, trying to think about an alternative reality where we've got a Steps equivalent to Miami 7. I can't see it happening until you sort of say.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you could just give H his own TV show. That would be entertaining enough. That would be perfect. You wouldn't need anybody else. You just give H. In fact, somebody should do that. Give H just a couple of video recorders, camcorders, whatever, phone, even anything these days, and let him go off and do crazy things. And I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, actually. We'll talk about H in a bit, but so if we could just cut back before we go back to talking about the band as a whole. How did it? Do you remember the first time you heard Steps?
I mean, the first time I heard Steps would have probably been super mega hit 5, 6, 7, 8, which I think is inescapable, really. as were many of their singles. You know, they were on the radio, they were on TV, they were absolutely everywhere. So I couldn't tell you precisely the first point that I would have heard them or paid attention to them, but those would have definitely been the songs that I would have heard first. I remember, you know, being, again, you know, very embarrassed being this little kid that was, you know, decked in black with long black hair, you know, with, you know, metal sort of tendencies and hardcore listenings and punk things and that, to, you know, really like pop music as well, and kind of almost saying it as a joke to lots of people. And then the joke got a bit more serious and a bit more serious and then very serious. Yeah, but the first song that I actually really cared about or liked, or, you know, purposely was like, actually, that's a really good song, was Deeper Shade of Blue, which was off their second album. And I thought, I still think that's a fantastic song. And I still genuinely want Dan O'Dell, our mate, to do an actual like rock cover of it, because I think that would work fantastically.
Yes. Dan O'Dell, previous guest, aka Heartwork, who, if he's not going to do Points of Authority, he should then do Deeper Shade of Blue.
He really should.
Yes, but yeah, so again, I think, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think was released in 1997, was it?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, 97, I think. Let me just fact check that. Yeah, 27th of November 1997, and it was very much a kind of line dancing kind of punk, like pop track. I think it's kind of
it was only ever supposed to be like a one-hit wonder, and Steps are then supposed to disappear off into obscurity, and go away with this one song, which, you know, probably netted the writers or the producers a fair amount of money, but wouldn't have landed the group with anything really, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's also a kind of, I think there might have been a kind of like almost brief moment where line dancing was back popular just in the mid to late 90s, I think, as well. But
apparently 5, 6, 7, 8 is still used in many dance classes, and certainly if you go to like a cheesy pop club, you're guaranteed to hear that. I think that's going to pop up at some point.
Actually, saying that, you mentioned the pop club thing. One of the things that I notice is that if you're at a kind of like a club that does a pop night, or you're at a wedding or some kind of weird like social gathering that will play music from the DJ, you can probably you'll get your staples like Mr. Brightside by the Killers is the Killers song that will get played. For example, those kind of things. One thing that I kind of noticed was that, okay, so S Club 7 is one of those acts that will always get played, but 99.9 times out of 10 it's always Reach. Reach is the one that gets played in the club and stuff. Steps, I think it's almost pot luck. I think Steps is one of those acts that there's quite a few different ones that get randomly played. I mean,
well, you used to get Tragedy quite a lot, didn't you? That used to get played to death. One for Sorrow, quite possibly, but it's not really an upbeat dancing number, is it? I'm not sure what, Stomp might make an appearance, but I feel like it's quite an underrated number one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I always found that quite interesting when talking about the songs that go into the public consciousness. But it is probably more likely to be Tragedy, but sometimes it will kind of feel like you've got. I'm pretty sure I've been to a club where 5, 6, 7, 8 gets thrown on randomly.
Yeah, it's just it's pureness of cheese, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a bit of fun. Everyone can enjoy that, no matter how cool you are.
I'm assuming this wasn't the first album of theirs you got or listened to. Then was it Step 1 or Spectacular?
Do you know what? Actually, this probably was the first one that I actually bought.
Oh, okay.
It probably was the first one that I actually bought. And I think I bought it in a sort of 5 for £30 in HMV or Virgin or one of those things. I definitely bought it in some sort of bundle deal, and the other things were all like metal albums. And so the cashier looked at me very weird. I do recall that. But I didn't at this point go out and just buy the album itself at, full price. And I think I then worked backwards and got Spectacular and then Step 1.
Okay. Okay, so for those listening who might not know who Steps are, so I think just before we start recording, I don't know whether it was just as we start. I think as we started recording, before we started recording, we were mentioning that pretty much anyone in our age range, who is British will know who Steps are. There's guaranteed you will. No, you might be surprised to find they're still going, but you will have known them and know some of the songs at that point. Steps are
thinking to your subconscious.
Yes, yeah.
Think that's not even a word. Sunk into your subconscious.
Yes. So Steps are a British dance pop group consisting of Lee Latchford Evans, Claire Richards, Lisa Scott Lee, Faye Tozer, and Ian. Quotation marks H. Watkins. Steps were formed in May 1997 by Tim Byrne, Barry Upton and Steve Crosby and have released 6 studio albums, 3 compilation albums and 22 singles. Their music has a 1990s dance pop sound. Their name was based on a marketing premise that each of their music videos were to be choreographed and the dance steps would be included in the sleeve with most of their singles. Which I remember because I remember my sister having the 5, 6, 7, 8 single, and like it will show you all the little. There's like 8 steps of all the different dance moves and stuff. So if you're thinking, if you remember like either Saturday Night by Wigfield or the Macarena, it's that kind of stuff. Apart from the fact you don't rotate, so there's kind of like dance steps to follow. So like when the chorus kicks in, there's always kind of these weird like dance movements that you can do with them, and any of the videos that you watch, there's always these kind of choreographed dances through them.
We all know that we both know these dance moves.
No comment. Steps achieved series of charting singles between 1997 and 2001, including 2 #1 singles in the UK, including one that's on this album we're talking about. One was a double A-side, 2 #1 albums in the UK, 14 consecutive top 5 singles in the UK, and a string of hits throughout Europe. And the group has sold over 20 million records worldwide, in addition to acquiring a Brit Award nomination in 1999 for Best Newcomer, while supporting Britney Spears on tour the same year. And they then released there's a greatest hits album in 2001. Then they kind of split up. They reformed in 2011 for a documentary series called Reunion, and I think they kind of disbanded again. And I think
at that point they released a Christmas album, which kind of went very much under the radar, and then disappeared for several years again.
But and then they came back in 2017 and they're still together and they've released about at least 2 albums, and by recording this they'll release 3 because there's one coming out very soon, as you mentioned. So Steps as a group themselves, they are in 97. We're very much deep into the Spice Girls have killed Britpop. There's a market for kind of this kind of group pop.
It was. You've got your boy bands, and you've got your girl bands, and then you've got your likes of Steps and S Club, and then later with Hearsay or anybody else like that. That were mixed up. But it was the late 90s were a very pop orientated place.
Yeah, I think we're at this point as well. Xenomania haven't fully become Xenomania yet, and I think we're gearing up towards kind of like when Girls Aloud and Sugar Babes start to kind of dominate. That's when the Xenomania start experimenting with stuff. So we're still kind of there's a very interesting kind of transition period where I don't think Xenomania are involved much with Steps, but there's a kind of like almost throwback to the Stock Aitken and Waterman era, who are actually involved in Steps, or at least Pete Waterman was.
That was the thing, because they were going to be a one-hit wonder, and then Pete Waterman sort of picked them up and dubbed them like, was it Amber on Speed?
Yes, yeah.
And then, he very much sort of pushed the way forward as to what they were going to be doing and where they were going, but not on this album.
Yeah, because Buzz itself, I think he was the only credit I think he has got in the writing credit is Better the Devil You Know, and I think he's got a production. No, actually, he's got a production credit on a couple of other songs, mainly the singles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, actually, I read somewhere that he actually had a hand in one or two of the others where it comes to the writing of it.
Yeah, he's got producer credit and writing credit on. He's got writing credit on Better the Devil You Know, but again, that's a cover of the Kylie Minogue track, which was like, and that's Stock, Akerman and Waterman, and that was pretty much their Imperial phase. Yeah. But yeah, they're kind of involved in that. But there's a lot more interesting, like, kind of mixtures of writers and producers involved, including one which threw me for six, and we'll talk when we get to the songs themselves. I'll bring that up. For a writer who wrote a couple of songs and what he's been involved with, and it blew my mind. Also as well, the album, which is 15 tracks long and 55 minutes long, blummy neck. Yeah. There are the album as well, and I think it's probably the only album, it might have been at this point anyway, I don't know if you can elaborate do it again, where there are solo kind of showcases.
This is the first album where Steps wrote songs independently. I say independently, I mean independently of each other, but with writers, and could then take lead vocals essentially on it. And so you've got those 5 tracks on there. I don't think they've done that since, and they certainly hadn't done it before. Yeah,
I mean, they'd received solos from each member, with the exception of Lee, who I think he kind of co-wrote Turn Around, which is later on the album. But
he does, yeah.
I don't know if that's him. I think it's H singing the leads in it. I think.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Yeah.
Lee always seemed to get sort of pushed even further back in the mix of everything, to the point that, you know, if you think back to that first single of 5, 6, 7, 8, Lee was doing all the rapping and he was up front.
Yeah. And
then since that point, it was like, yeah, right, you guys stand over there and dance and look pretty, but you're not doing anything else, mate.
Yeah. In this as well, and I can't remember it might have been another podcast that brought this up. Actually, it might have been the Naughtiest Naughty when they got to this point with like Stomp and the Summer of Love and stuff. In that, I think there was a point where he actually started refused to mime along in the videos if he wasn't in the mix. So, for example, in the Stomp and the Summer of Love, there's a bit where it's the male singing section where it's H singing, and you just see Lee not move his mouth at all.
Oh.
So yeah, so so in the Summer of Love and the Stomp videos, especially, you will see him during like the pre-chorus. He's just not miming along. And I think that was him saying, "If I'm not in the mix or you can't hear me, I can't see the point of me."
Yeah, with a little point to it. Yeah, interesting. Since stepping back, he has had a lot more to do, and he sounds good.
Yeah, I've got. I mean, I'm only kind of speculating. I'm assuming part of, like, either agreement or one of the things he probably wanted a bit more of the singing credits and stuff. And looking at some of the later videos in the lead up to this, he's almost like the vocals are a lot more shared evenly, whereas particularly not the first couple of albums, they kind of really just lean onto either Faye, Claire and H.
Well, I mean, look at One for Sorrow, might as well have been a Claire solo single.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody else is particularly even on it.
Yeah.
There might be some harmonies in the background, that's about it. But it was, the Steps formula at that time was Claire sings, if there's another verse, Faye will get it. If they want a little bridge or something like that, they might give it to H, or Lisa possibly. But all the hook and everything else would have been Claire. Yeah,
exactly. I think, well, I noticed as well, I think Lisa has a lot more kind of solo stuff or solo verses in this album, I think, from what I remember. As well. So the balance is slowly getting more into things. I mean, but it's something that usually happens in all kind of girl/boy groups. I think, which is kind of weird when you think about. I think the Spice Girls kind of managed to do that balance quite well from the off. But then when you get
to Victoria doesn't have anything in Wannabe, does she? is it Victoria or Mel C? And then I remember that thing of on the first like singles, Mel C has very little in there, and then you listen to the later ones, and actually it's pretty much all Mel C. And then she went on to obviously have, you know, that really good couple of albums after the breakup, and everybody was like, "Wow, Mel C is fantastic."
But yeah, and I think and everyone seemed surprised that when she went to the West End, and I think she, I don't know the play that well. You probably know it better than me. Blood Brothers, I think she played the mom, which I'm
Mrs. Johnson in Blood Brothers.
I'm assuming's a main role. I think.
Oh yes, yeah. She'd have she's got the big songs in it, basically.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot more. It kind of like evens out a bit. I mean, like again, to bring up S Club, I think S Club 7 was kind of like Joe and Co for the most part. And funnily enough, when you get to one of the more well known singles, Reach, is the one where it's a lot more evenly based around the different people and stuff. And I think Bring It On Back is the same as well. But then you get to songs called Natural, which might as well be an audition piece for Rachel Stevens' solo career. But yeah, see, but I think as well, it's interesting in that you've got those kind of the 5 members of Steps and them forming themselves. They're not as, I think perhaps with the exception of H, they're not larger than life characters. Whereas if you compare the formula of Spice Girls, the Spice Girls were very unique personalities. You could tell who was singing straight away, and they kind of like bounced out. Whereas with Steps, I think it was probably more about the songs than the actual character of the... Yeah,
I mean, I don't think that, as you say, they weren't larger than life in terms of being over-the-top characters other than H. But then, actually, you know, you ponder how much of that was H being told, amp it up a bit, ramp that bit up, because you're our token spokesperson for this. You're our token silly, or, you know, merriment giver. Because I kind of feel that since they've been back, that's been dialed down, and they've kind of come across as more, I don't want to say everyday sort of people, because, you know, they're still they're doing musicals and owning schools and this, that, and the other, but more certainly a bit more down to earth than this, you know, crazy lifestyle that everyone else was supposed to lead.
Yeah, and I think before we move on to the track listings, the only other kind of thing that leaps out in terms of the individual members was, I think, Lisa Scott Lee attempted a solo career and made the... I can't remember when it was exactly. I think it was pretty much a couple of years after Steps broke up. She tried her hand at a solo career and then made the very public declaration that if a song that she released doesn't get into the top 10, she'll quit music forever. And it resulted in getting into number 13.
Yeah, I mean, they, other than Lee, I think they all went for the solo career. So Claire and H obviously paired up and got signed up for, was it a 3-album deal or something like that? And I think had the one hit with a theme from Beauty and the Beast or something like that. If they had a really good single with Russell Watson,
which was it was more classical though, wasn't it? Because Russell Watson's a classical singer, isn't he? And
and actually, what you know, one of the things that always amuses me with Faze, I say at the time I used to read Kerrang! Magazine a lot, and there was a review of it must have been like Rendell Leeds sort of thing, and she was there, and they were like, "Oh, who have you come to see?" And she'd gone to see somebody like System of a Down or Metallica or something like that. And it was just sort of like, what? This is insane. It's only brilliant. So, you know, she tried her hand at various things. And, you know, I mean, she's still out there doing musical theatre. She's just about to finish a run of Singing in the Rain in London at the moment. So that's, you know, that's great. I think Lee's done a fair amount of musical theatre as well, possibly. I could be wrong on that. But Lisa Scott Lee she had the 2 bursts of solo careers. She had her first one, So Lately, came out, and that was a fantastic song. That was a brilliant single. And then I think the second one that she released didn't get as high, and the album was never officially released, I don't think. And then she had the TV show to come back with it, and that part kind of bit her in the backside.
Yeah, Totally Scott Lee, that was it.
Yeah.
I just found it because because I think also she had, is it a couple of brothers that formed 3SL,
for ESL.
Yeah.
Right, a couple of brothers. Go on, guess how many?
3.
Yeah, you'd be right there.
Yeah, because obviously a couple means 3, Latham. So, so okay, if you're talking about the buzz and the songs themselves, and which songs jump out to you when you think of this album?
I mean, it's singles, isn't it? Really, it's single stomp. It's an absolute stormer of a single. Summer of Love is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. To the point that I always kind of regret that I didn't use that in my wedding at some point, because it really should have been. It's The Way You Make Me Feel. It's just an amazing song, absolutely brilliant. And then there's like the forgotten track, I always call it, or what could have been a single but never was, which is the title track of Buzz. And I think that's brilliant as well.
Okay, I want to talk about the singles, but let's just jump to Buzz, because Buzz, the first time I listened to it was about a couple of weeks ago in the lead up to, in the research for this, and I mean, it sounds like video game music at the start, and then kicks in with, and then it kicks in and the song sounds, it almost goes Mystique before Mystique were a thing. And it reminds me a lot of Billy Piper's first album as well, which is Honey to the Bee, which I listened to a lot because I found that it was really good to revise to. It's got this very relaxing kind of thing, and I seem to be quite productive doing homework while listening to that album.
You've heard it there. Right, you've heard it there. You need to revise for an exam. You need to revise for a test of some sort. Do some work. Billy Piper's Honey to the Bee. Thank Latham afterwards.
Yeah, so what is it about Buzz that like you just think's great?
It's catchy. It's catchy. It's one of these things that, let's face it, at this point in time, pop acts were singles bands. It was very much, here's some singles, okay, and there's some other tracks in the background of an album. And you could almost pick the singles the moment an album was released. You'd go, that's the single, that's the single, that's the single, and then they proved right a year or so later. But Buzz, has got some buzz about it. It's got a bounce to it. It's got, it's something that I think could have been a single, essentially. What did you think when you heard it?
I mean, again, video game music, and then bouncy. It is like a mix between Mystique and again Billy Piper.
It kind of reminds me of.
Not Britney Spears. There's another song that reminds me a lot of Britney Spears, actually, which I'll mention a bit later on. But it just has that kind of. It's catchy. It's very catchy, and do you know much about the writers behind this?
I don't know a thing about the writers.
Okay, so the two writers are a guy called Andy Goldmark, who I couldn't find much about, and a guy called Mark Mueller. Now, Mark Mueller is a songwriter, I think he's an American songwriter, who I think his biggest kind of pop song was, do you remember Crush by Jennifer Page?
Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote that. He wrote a few songs that were kind of famous in like America, so that if I mention him you wouldn't have heard him. He's also responsible for what I think might be one of the best pieces of music ever made. Well, or two, depending on a preference.
I mean, Buzz is great, mate, but I wouldn't say it was that. One of the best pieces ever made. No,
it's not the best thing he's written.
Go on then.
So he has written the theme tunes for Chippendale and DuckTales.
Oh, that's fair play.
So, and DuckTales is the best theme song ever made. So, I saw that and it was like, well, okay. He wrote the words and the music for the DuckTales theme tune. And
Guy's got skills.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, blooming heck. That's very impressive. He also did Chippendale's Rescue Rangers game, which is good. It gets absolutely craps over by DuckTales.
Chippendale, brilliant. Rescue Rangers was awesome. That was the first thing I watched on Disney Plus when I got it.
I ended up watching it was DuckTales for me, but I ended up watching the reboot, and very controversial, or not controversial, depending. I actually think the reboot of DuckTales is better than the original. So Buzz is just again that kind of it's just got that. It sounds very 2000 as well. It sounds it's a time capsule of its.
The quote you said earlier on about their sound is, was it a 90s dance group? And it's like, well, at the time we just called it a dance group. They were in the 90s. And there's no escaping it. Now, the album as a whole sounds quite dated because, well, it is. That's 21 years old. It is of its time. And I think if anybody was to go back and re-release it now, it would sound utterly different.
Yeah.
I think you could say that about most albums. You listen to, a lot of Paul McCartney solo stuff, and you go, Christ, that's 80s galore. There's several ones that you just go, oh my God, what was he thinking? But then at the time, that was the sound that was available and around, and it was cutting edge. And so that's what people went with.
So they were described as kind of ABBA on speed, particularly on the first two albums. Here, I think it's slightly removed from the ABBA sound, but they are very European sounding, and there's a lot of dance pop kind of Euro dance elements to it. There is like almost like aqua elements to them. I don't know how big they were across sort of Europe. Actually, I don't know. Maybe there was they were taking influence from the Europop sort of sound. I'm pretty sure, though, actually, from something I read earlier, that one of the writers on Buzz was either Swiss or Swedish. Yeah, it was. I think Andreas Karlsson.
Mm-hmm.
Andreas Karlsson is a Swedish pop producer, but he was actually one of the writers for Here and Now, which is a cover. It's a cover of a song from a group called Worlds Apart.
Mm.
But I think as well, Jürgen Elofsson is another Swedish one who wrote The Way You Make Me Feel.
Yeah.
It's The Way You Make Me Feel. And it is, what I find quite funny is that, considering it's a band that has their bigger hit, one of their biggest hits is a cover. There's two covers on here, and there's a couple of song titles which I also thought were covers. Hand on Your Heart, which is the Claire Richards solo one, which funny enough is the ballad. Is the ballad. Is a name of a Carly song. And I think The Way You Make Me Feel. Way You Make Me Feel is another title, and that's just blanked me. I can't remember who sung. Michael Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the "it's the" at the start of it. That's how he can tell the difference. It's got the "it's the" on there. Andrew Frampton, who he's got credited on the Claire solo, which is Hand on Your Heart, and the H one, Learn to Love Again. Andrew Frampton he's actually wrote quite a few of the songs from the earlier albums as well, and he's also I think a co-writer for a song called T-Shirt by Chantel, which is one of those kind of a pop song, which is kind of like a guilty pleasure, mainly because I think I don't know if you remember T-Shirt by Chantel.
No.
Nothing but your T-shirt on. Dun, dun. No,
but you can carry on singing it.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I want people to carry on listening and not turn this off. But yeah, it's one of those like. I won't go too much into it, but it's one of those kind of like songs which is like I said, someone who's like kind of missing their partner and stuff. But I always see it as someone who's grieving from someone who's just recently from a loved one that's died, and it makes the song a lot more poignant. If anyone here knows which song I'm on about, Chantel T-Shirt, and is someone you want to go about, listen to the song again, but just picture that the person she's singing about has died, and it becomes a lot more tragic. Yeah. Well, when the chorus is "I'm in bed, I lie with nothing but your T-shirt on," which is like, yeah, I think it's a more rare grief anyway. So let's have a chat about a couple of the singles, and I'm gonna and perhaps annoy a couple of people listening. I think the Better You Devil You Know cover is crap. I've never liked it.
What?
The original is so much better. It's
what it is, isn't it? It was, It's surprising actually that it even made this album, because it had already been a single a good year or so beforehand. It was a double A with something, and so it's surprising that it was even on this album and not just a throwaway track. But it wasn't just left as a double A side somewhere.
I think I think cynical marketing is that they were trying to repeat Tragedy. They was trying to repeat the kind of the kind of like the dance poppy cover of the Bee Gees song. So they thought, and I'm assuming as well, because I think Pete Waterman was probably still involved, very key in their involvement. They probably could they got the rights for cheap. It was probably a lot cheap. It was probably a lot cheap. It was cheap for them to cover it.
But it is surprising that they then, after a year or so, put it onto the album.
Yeah, I think
it acts as some sort of stopgap in between, because it opens the album, and so it's kind of like, remember this? Now here's some more.
Yeah, I think one of the I think from that as well, there's the trio of the other singles. Stomp, Summer of Love, and The Way You Make Me Feel. Stomp's okay, but it's not.
Stomp okay. No, Stomp is bloody brilliant, Latham.
See,
it's absolutely fantastic. What don't you like about Stomp?
I don't know.
I great dance. You get to stomp all night. It's fantastic.
I mean,
it was a number one. It was huge.
Yeah, but pop idol stars have got number ones. The number one is not a Clarence. He's not an example of quality. But it's okay. It's okay, but it's not. I don't know. I mean, then I learned that it's actually sampling and takes an interpolation of Chic, Everybody Dance. And when you listen to that, it's like, oh yeah, I can never notice that before. But stuff. I don't know. It's catchy. I don't know. I think part of it is because I'm not a fan of the video. I think the video is really kind of the video dates. The video is
really 90s.
I think the video was dated before it was even actually filmed. Which is basically like, oh yeah, I want you to kind of watch my very expensive looking flat, throw a party and having to clear up the mess, which I think is, which I'm pretty sure is like been like several videos have had the same kind of premise. But but no, it has got that kind of like has that kind of stompy stompy percussion to it, and it has that it is like kind of like dance moving type thing. But see, the song that
it's like their original or their better version of 5, 6, 7, 8, essentially.
Yes, okay, it's
built for the dance floor. It's built for arenas. It's built to get people clapping along, stomping along, and having fun. And that's what I think is brilliant about it.
Yeah, but I'll take the one that I really, really like and has kind of always been stayed in my head rent free is Summer of Love. I love Summer of Love. I think it's actually
great song.
It's a great song. Even again randomly on I think it's Freaky Trigger popular series that covers like all the number ones. Someone in the comments mentioned about them preferring Summer of Love and then pointed out a song called Pale Movie by St. Etienne. And I don't know, have you ever listened to St. Etienne's Pale Movie?
No.
Think of when Max Martin heard Maps by the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and thought, you know what, that song really needs a massive chorus, and then built Since You've Been Gone for Kelly Clarkson.
Okay.
Right. I'm surprised no one's flagged up the fact that Summer of Love, the choruses seem completely ripped from Pale Movie.
Okay.
Yeah, so the melody's the same. It fits, the melody's the same, but then like the chorus is just like kind of like a very subdued la 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 la. So it doesn't have that kind of like bombastic chorus, but the verses pretty much matched. It's the kind of Latin guitar, kind of Latin American guitar, almost like nearly flamenco style kind of flourishes, feel like they're kind of lifted from Pale Movie. But aside from that, it's still a bloody massive banger, and that's
right.
Yeah.
But it's the second one that I've got to go. I'm surprised it made the album because it was a double A side with When I Say Goodbye, which was off their previous album.
Mm.
So again, it's kind of like you've released this, a fair amount of time beforehand. Why is it popping up again now? Was it just to have it on an album, or it seems a bit of an odd one. Brilliant song, fantastic. I'm glad it's there because it is an amazing song. But yeah, the part of me that kind of goes, surely there were or are other songs that could have been put on the album rather than repeating.
Again, considering it's all the singles front load the album, it's probably marketing to try and get people to see. And again, bringing up the music video. The music video, not as dated, but again, it's the fashion kind of dated, but it's
a Gap advert essentially.
It's a Gap advert, yeah. But it's basically like there's like what I think is supposed to be is like you got a good version of Steps and a darker version of Steps kind of dancing off.
Yeah.
But the premise doesn't really kind of capitalize on that, so it's just basically the band, like kind of like you just get shots of the same band member dressed like in a summery thing, or like kind of like dark gothy sort of thing and stuff. But what's always thrown me in that is at the very very start, there's the a cappella kind of "This is the summer of love and the heart." Yeah, there's a shot of Claire who looks like she's trying hard not to laugh, or she's looking at someone off screen and they're trying to make her laugh, and she looks like she's. And that shot's always kind of like, I've always been intrigued what's making her laugh.
You watch these videos more than me. That's saying something.
It's called research, Addis.
You actually watch them far more intently than I ever have done.
But yeah, but I think Summer Love. I love the chorus. It's great. I don't know, it's just something. It's one of the songs I think should have been slightly bigger for them, because I don't think it reached number one. It's one of the better songs of theirs that should have been number one. I like it more than Stomp anyway. So
I can see that.
Yeah. And if we just briefly talk about the other single, which is The Way You Make Me Feel, and this is one of the ones which sounds like they're trying to emulate the Britney sound, particularly vocally. There's that strain, like particularly "There's the thing that you do." There's that kind of like there's a very unique.
That's your impression of this song, is it?
Yes, that is my impression of this song. It's like yeah. I
hope that doesn't get edited out.
I definitely not. I am absolutely shit at impressions. Everyone should know this. But there's that kind of vocal inflection or vocal style that Britney Spears has. Particularly if you listen to sing songs like "Oops, I Did It Again." There's that. I don't know what the terminology is. I mean, you're married to a vocal coach. You probably know more. You should hopefully know more about it than I do.
It's the imitation, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
But bear in mind that they've been touring with Britney Spears for a while by the point.
Yeah.
So whether that has some sort of knock on into it, or or the writer's actually gone, oh yeah, this kind of works, or perhaps it is one of these songs that was offered around because they were I'm pretty sure they were on the same label, and so maybe a lot of songwriters were just going, right, we've got these songs, who are we digging it out to? And maybe it wasn't written with them in mind, but it was written for Britney. I don't know.
Yeah, but again, if we go back to the fact that it's Jürgen Elofsson who wrote it, he's a single writer, so it's just him. If you have a look at his writing credits, so in 1999 he wrote "You Drive Me Crazy" sometimes by Britney Spears. He also wrote, so he wrote "You Drive Me Crazy," which I think kind of carries on by that. But he also wrote a load of Westlife songs.
Did he write the good one? Did he write World Horror?
No, he didn't. No, he wrote Fool Again, which again I think he wrote Fool Again, which yeah. So yeah, but then again he also wrote A Man Like This by Kelly Clarkson. So he wrote quite a lot of Gareth Gates, and okay. that's interesting. I have just okay. I don't know if anyone knows this, but on the Spider-Man 2 soundtrack, there's a song by Anna Johnson called "We Are." He also wrote that. So yeah, so that's got kind of yeah, I can kind of see where the those similarities cross over then. So he's kind of, particularly with some of those earlier Britney songs.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. It's the way you make me feel. For a very long time, in fact, I would have said that was my favourite Steps song. I just think I just love the sound of it, and it's not as and this sounds weird when we're talking about Steps, but it's not as dance or as beat orientated as many of the others.
Yeah, I think, and I've talked about kind of sequencing of tracks on the album. You've got Better Than We Know, Stomp and Summer Love, a kind of like almost dancey pop songs, but then you have The Way You Make Me Feel, and then right after that you've got 3 solid, very similar sounding kind of dance pop tracks. Yeah, with You'll Be Sorry, Learn to Love Again, and Never Get Over You, which are kind of like heading back into like almost like you just accidentally stumbled into an Ibiza club. But so it's kind of like a buffer. I mean,
bear in mind that the next single was You'll Be Sorry. So it literally was just like, here's your single at the front of it.
Yeah, and You'll Be Sorry, and because it was a double A side with Here and Now. I actually don't remember that. I couldn't remember that at all.
It came out very much towards the end of this touring cycle, and I don't think it did massively well because both songs were already on the album. So yeah, it kind of came out and then disappeared. But I'm pretty sure, if memory serves me right, they opened with You'll Be Sorry on their comeback tour. Pretty sure they did. They had these little pods, and I'm sure they opened with that.
So let's quickly move on to the reception of the album. So Buzz received favourable critical response from different music magazines and websites. Everyone noticed the group's departure from the quote-unquote ABBA sound into their own musical style. All Music stated they do in fact have their own sound, and it was revealed itself here crystal clear. So the album is said to be less successful than their first releases, only peaking at number 4 in the UK albums chart.
So that surprises me that this one is the one that's considered less successful. And I guess in terms of sales-wise, I can see why, but I'm very surprised that this one didn't sell as well as the previous 2, because the strength of the singles alone is enough. They were selling out arenas left, right and centre at this point. They were a huge pop, force, essentially. And for it not to have sold as well as the others, really surprises me.
I'm wondering whether it was the more casual fans that perhaps liked the earlier stuff, who were probably had either grown out of the sound and moved on to other stuff, and it was the diehards that kind of stayed with them.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Which I think is what usually happens with quite a few, particularly the pop acts of this era. I think, but it did achieve double platinum status though. But then again, I think it double platinum, but in comparison, Step 1 was 8 times platinum, and Spectacular was 4 times. So it is diminishing returns. So I think it is perhaps. I don't want to say cultural relevance. I don't, because Steps were big, but I don't think they were of a massive cultural significance as if you compare them to the Spice Girls, for example. No.
In terms of, take that, Spice Girls, they're your go-tos at this point.
They were, I think they were a result of a musical transition rather than the cause of. So take that kind of reignited all this kind of like 90s boy bands stuff. The Spice Girls changed the music in the UK. I think I mentioned in the Blue Towns episode with Hannah from Side Tales Media Next podcast that the Britpop era was short-lived because Wannabe came out, and because of the impact of that you would not have had Steps without the Spice Girls. Else Steps probably would have been another Britpop. Steps would have been a Britpop group still. So without Wannabe, we'd have had a lot more of Britpop. So I do feel So I don't think there was. I don't think they had that kind of lasting kind of loyalty that perhaps the Spice Girls would have got at that point.
But then actually, I don't know. Did the Spice Girls get diminishing returns on their albums as well?
That's interesting. I think the third album, I can't remember what the third album was called, but that was after Jerry left, which I think is not the death knell, but
major turning point.
But it's also considered to be the only album not to sell 1 million copies in the United Kingdom before the group's Boxing Day split. To date, it has sold more than 680,000 units in the UK, becoming their lowest selling album whilst they were still together. But I think their kind of albums post reunion later on probably haven't sold as much as this. But
well, I think their Christmas album I don't think sold very well at all. But I would argue that the other two, Tears on the Dance Floor and What the Future Holds, have probably sold really well. They've certainly hit sort of high parts in the singles and the album charts again.
Yeah. But I mean, if you compare the metric of a successful album now to 2000, I mean, like 10%. I mean, to get 68,000 units in the UK now of purchased physical albums that could probably get you a number one now. Yeah, probably get number one single because of the wave streaming and the digital. Well, digital sales probably counts as a purchase, doesn't it? But it's the metric is so different now because of how the music model has changed. So this is a question leading up to, and I've got an answer for it as well. And I think I might have actually referenced this before, but in earlier episode. No, actually, it's definitely been brought up in the Heartwork episode about Blink-182 when I spoke to Dan. Mm. Have you ever seen Steps live?
I have. I've seen Steps 4 or 5 times now. And in fact, I'm due to see them again in November, and I can't wait.
So when did you see him? Did you see him like all the way back in the?
I did. I saw them on the Gold tour in that way back. And then they broke up about a week later.
And it was your fault.
And I went, yeah, it was my fault. My sister bought me a ticket for Christmas, I think it was. And I went on my own. In the same week that I saw things like Deftones and Soulfly and everything else. And rocked up there with my long hair, danced and sang my little heart out, and then went home. So it probably looks like I was, in the complete wrong place at the wrong time.
Was this? Because I know before I knew you had like long black, almost dreadlocks. Yeah. So was this when you?
This would have been around that point. This would have been around then. So I probably looked like an absolute fish out of water. But I had a whale of a time. It was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic.
So, and the next times you saw them was after they reunited? Yeah,
that would have been the first reunion tour.
Yeah.
Back in the same venue in Birmingham. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, do you remember much of their first early tours? Because I think, I ended up watching quite a bit of their live videos, because a lot of the live show, and it's a show. There's a lot of visuals, costume changes, and particularly anything that seems to be post 2017. There's a lot of dancers on them, and they don't dance as much as perhaps the much younger kind of dancers that have around them.
I'd say that there's a very good reason for that.
Well, they're in the 40s now.
Well, there's that, but I would say that they probably weren't live in those early tours, but they are live now. They had. I don't think anybody could argue that they're miming these days at all, because it's a live sound. It sounds brilliant. Whereas probably back then, a lot of it would have been mimed, or played to mics would switch on and off so that you could get cheers to the crowd and one bit or another.
One of the ones, I think it's from 2001 or 2002. There's a video on YouTube where 5, 6, 7, 8 is played. But on stage are obviously 5 male dancers with massive heads.
Oh yes, they're huge heads. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was in the early noughties. So it was about 2001, I think. So like, and so just
that could have been the Gold tour. I'm pretty sure I saw that.
Yeah, which is basically like a bunch of dancers trying to dance with these massive, heavy kind of caricature heads, which looked awful. I might add, they're like almost like the spitting image. People will probably think that, will probably think they're too grotesque. That's what they look like. But and it's just a case. It looks like someone's just pressed play on the 5, 6, 7, 8 CD. Whereas I've seen, I think particularly in 2007, 2008 videos, them actually doing 5, 6, 7, 8 live, and like Lee's front and centre, and like everyone's enjoying themselves. The whole crowd are singing along, and
yeah, I think this was a point where they'd kind of gone. I don't think they played them for a while, maybe, but it was like because it didn't quite fit with the rest of the sound anymore. You know, it was too kitsch, too one hit wondery as it was, and so I think they kind of sidestepped it for a while, and then to bring it back onto the Gold Tour, because you couldn't do a greatest hits without having 5, 6, 7, 8 on there. It was used as a costume change.
Yeah.
So they were doing, I can't remember exactly, it's been a very long time, but they'd be doing something, doing one song, and then that came out, and they could disappear off and do a costume change and come back on for the next song in their different image, whatnot. But it was like a filler, essentially. Now, we both know that you picked me to the post on this, so I didn't see Steps until they were about to break up. But you were there from the early days, were you not?
Yeah, I've seen Steps live once. I can't remember the date. I can't remember the date or where it was, but I've got some. I know it was before the second album, I think, because it was basically my sister Catherine. She massive Steps fan, and so she probably would have been about 11 or 12, so prime kind of demographic for the kind of Steps pop music stuff. And I think it was either a birthday or a Christmas present where they actually got tickets to see her live at the NEC in Birmingham. And it was, but mum and dad bought as a family, so it was my mum, dad, my sister, and me that went. And it's I always say I've got 3 first gigs. But this was like the de facto first gig. So my first ever gig was seeing Steps live. It must have been either early 2000, because I can only remember a few things. I remember there was about 3 or 4 support acts. I can't remember who the hell they were, but I know there was quite a few. There's at least 3. There's at least 3, and then on the live and on the actual show itself, I remember I think a lot of them had solo stuff, because I remember Faye singing to, basically a child was brought up on stage, and she sat on a bench singing to this boy who was about 5 or 6 years old. He looked terrified, but the thing that I have a vivid memory of, which could help date it, is that they had not released Say You'll Be Mine yet, and they're saying our new single is going to be Say You'll Be Mine, which you've not heard yet, so you're going to hear it for the first time here. And there was teaching the audience the dance moves to Say You'll Be Mine.
Okay.
So because there's that movement where they kind of did the clock 12, 3, 4, 6 and 9 o'clock. I remember them kind of teaching the audience those moves. So I think it's going to be the early 2000s. No, actually, it might be in the 90s.
No, before that.
It'd be 1999, I think.
Yeah.
So I probably could have been either 13 or 14, and my sister could have been about 10, I think. So yeah. So it was before Say You'll Be Mine was released.
And were you pleased to be going to see Step?
I think I enjoyed myself. I was probably ambivalent towards them at the first, but I think I got involved. Started dancing. My dad was even dancing as well.
I'd love to have video footage of that. Little Raven.
But yeah, I mean, then my I think, as I either mentioned on this podcast, at least I think it might be the Kiara Gets Drunk Talks About Music podcast. My next gig was in 2004 when I was 18 to see the Killers for £7 at the Carling Academy. And then it was about 5, and then it'd be 5.5 years for my next gig. So that's my, which I think I might mention, but I'm not going to mention it in case they're due to come up in a future episode. But yeah, so my first kind of live music experience was like an arena show. And it was Steps when I was like a teenager.
Yeah, I
So
think a lot of people, start off at these things. A lot of people end up with their first gig being an arena-filling pop band.
yeah.
Yeah, wrong with that.
What was
At
your
all.
first ever gig? Oh,
I mean, other than like little pub gigs, technically, the first thing that I went to watch was the Ozfest in '98. So the first band, I think, was Pitch Shifter and then Fear Factory. But the first actual indoor gig was Clawfinger in the Wolverhampton Wolfram. Yeah.
okay. I've always been on two minds of what's cooler or more interesting, whether it's kind of credible, quote unquote, credible band, or like when people say it's like some kind of like kitschy pop stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where like it's you can either laugh about it or you can be proud about it. But I mean, yeah, I do say I've got 3 first gigs, but I never deny that I've seen Steps.
Yeah.
It's just that
My family, we didn't watch a lot of music. We weren't particularly a musical family in terms of nobody played anything and nobody was particularly bothered. But I believe my sister had gone to see things like the Wonder Stuff and Ned and possibly Green Day as well, actually. But she was never particularly bothered about it. So it was never something that cropped up on my radar until I was, in my mid-teens. And, before that point, the band that I was, obsessed with was the Beatles, and there was no chance of seeing them.
Yeah.
I'd probably actually, because I would have been to Liverpool and into the Cavern, if we're going to call it first gig, it would have probably been whoever was playing the Cavern at that point, pretending to be the Beatles. But I have no real recollection of that at all, in fact. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think it's very similar. I think, yeah, my next gig was when I was 18, and then I was 24 the next gig. So like my third ever gig I was 24. I missed kind of the teenage going to gigs and stuff, but I don't know if I had the urge or at least the encouragement to go, because the experience at the Killers, it wasn't the music, it was more the crowd. I wasn't, but a whole other story other than that anyway. So people have listened to Buzz and gone, "Ooh, I've gotten a buzz for Steps," pun intended. Where else do you recommend they go in terms of their discography after Buzz?
I mean, they need to listen to what the future holds. Frankly, people need to listen to that because it's a fantastic album. I think Sia had a huge hand in writing a lot of it, and that is, I can't say I've actually particularly paid much attention to Sia previously, but these songs are huge. And it's exactly where Steps should be, exactly where they are. You listen to it and you go, yeah, this is Steps, but it's not a kind of cheesy, dated sound. It's very much, their own sound now.
Okay, so it doesn't seem, so they're not just deliberately trying to throw back and repeat, in like trying to repeat the 2000s, or the equivalent of Mr. Incredible trying to put on his old costume at the start of
No, I
the
don't
film.
think so at all. It's not a nostalgia fest. It's not look at what we could have done back then. And I don't think they've actually done, since they've reformed, I think they've just done their own tours. I don't think they've done a kind of hits of the 90s tour as you see various other people do, or
But big, like the nostalgia cash grab type.
Yeah, I don't think they've done that at all.
So that's interesting. So because you kind of have you've got bands that do like anniversary tours and stuff, but they're probably bands that still have like modern new albums to do. So like you got all still touring bands that carry on touring and they're constantly touring, this kind of stuff. But then, as you said, you got like people who just seem to. There's the cynical marketing aspect of, okay, I need to finish paying off my mortgage. Let's form a supergroup, and then which then leads to the big reunion on like the ITV and it's
like Bloom, A1, the likes of those. They've all done these sort of cash grab sort of shows and festivals and things, and it's fine.
But I think Steps seems to. I think you can be cynical and saying, oh, they're doing the cash grab thing, but if that was the case, I don't. They're still. I wouldn't have thought they would still be putting out music and still touring.
No.
They would have probably released. They'd come back for 2017, released whatever the album was that. Come back in 2017, done that tour, done the tour, and their kind of date active section on Wikipedia would probably be a lot more. It would be like, it wouldn't be 2017 dash question mark. Yeah. You get. I'm from what I'm seeing, I've got the impression that they're enjoying what they're doing. They kind of want to carry on.
I think so. And I certainly wasn't expecting another album in such quick succession as this, as part 2's come out. But I guess, the pandemic and etc. If there were songs left over, then yeah, go for it.
The final, small little side story, alluding to what we was talking about at the start with the Mr. Frank Turner thing as well. I
clocked on a while ago as to what story you were going to reference here.
Yes. So in 2012, Frank Turner did it's not his 1000. I keep misinterpreting it as his 1000 show. It's not. It's the first time it's his first arena show, I think, wasn't it?
First time he headlined Wembley.
Yeah, and that was in April 2012 because I've got the ticket on the wall in front of me somewhere.
It was just before I moved up to Liverpool, so.
I can't see it on my kind of.
It would have been April.
Yeah, got it. Friday the 13th of April 2012. It's Frank Turner and Sleeping Souls plus Billy Bragg at the Wembley Arena. Yeah, price at £20. Yes.
Bargain! What a bargain!
Yeah, and you was wearing a sweatshirt, and the sweatshirt had the logo of Steps on it.
Well, I would have called it a T-shirt to be fair, rather than a sweatshirt. But yes, I was. Now, the story of this goes in that I was going to watch Steps on their reunion tour, and it just so happened that it was the night before the Wembley show. Now, Frank's label Extra Mile had organised a kind of the night before show where they were putting on various acts. And a lot of our friends were playing. So Ben Marwood was playing, I think Oxygen Thief was playing, Jim Locke and the Solemn Sun were playing, and Billy Bragg was going to headline, and everyone was expecting me to be there, and I was getting various phone calls from Barry, from Jim, are you coming down? And I was like, no, I'm watching Steps.
Yeah.
I'm going to go watch Steps. And they were like, Addis, don't be ridiculous. This is going to be a brilliant night. Come down. And I was like, no. I'm going to watch that. That's what I want. I'm going to watch that. I will see you tomorrow at Wembley. And I had a fantastic time watching them live. Absolutely loved it. Bought myself a T-shirt. And then just to annoy everybody, I did wear it the following day. And as the story goes, there was a point where I'd gone to the bar whilst we were in the arena. And as I'm walking back with a few drinks in hand, this guy looks up at me and turns to his mates and he goes, look at that dickhead wearing a Steps T-shirt. Now, unfortunately for him, he was wearing a 2003 Festival T-shirt. And I played 2003s. I also had a hand in running a couple of stages and things there. And I knew that my band name was on his back. And so I very easily just shut him down and go, look at that dickhead with my band name on his back. And his mates then started taking the piss out of him. And I was like, it's one of my proudest moments, that is. It's just the ideal moment of somebody trying to make me look stupid and me go, you've fallen for this one hook, line and sinker, mate. Plus, I have no shame in the fact that I like Steps and wear a Steps T-shirt.
Yeah, I still have a picture of you at the pub we all met in, with your thumbs up with the Steps logo on, which I might actually post on the podcast Instagram if you're willing. Yeah, I'll yeah.
These pictures, aren't I?
Yeah. But like with the Steps logo wall thing with your thumbs up. There's even a group photo actually with all of us pointing to the Steps logo. Yes, I'll need to find that out as well. I will have to find that out. Because it's hilarious because everyone's just pointing it with their very confused faces, which is great. that's it. We're coming up to the end of our chat about steps.
Yeah.
So we're here now at the very important question, which is the song for the playlist. Now, for anyone who's not listened to this before, what this is, I will ask Addis to choose one song from this album to be immortalised forever in the Spotify Playlist Hall of Fame. I can't veto it, and it's basically he has free reign to choose which song from this album he can go to, and basically any song he picks is going to be a nice cleanser from the Hawkeye song that we had from last episode, which is just going to... So which song are you going to pick for the playlist?
You know what? I was going back and forth over this because initially I was like, right, I'm not going to put a single on there. I'm going to put something else. And so I was like, I'm going to put Buzz on there. That's what's going to go on there. But then you said that you can't veto it and it makes you want to put Stomp on there just to irritate you. However, I'm actually going to put It's the Way You Make Me Feel on there because that's such a beautiful song and more people need to hear it and remember that steps are awesome.
Yeah, okay. It's the Way You Make Me Feel is going to be the next song to join, and that is such a very weird handbrake turn from the Hawkeye song by Monotrona, which you probably know idea which album. On the time of recording, Addis probably no idea what the episode before is, but those of you listening will have. So going from a C64 shouty song to this is, I really can't wait to experience that transition.
That's like when I put my phone on shuffle.
Yeah, and but it'll probably be a very interesting song to lead into the next episode, which I'm not going to spoil. But yeah, that's it. With that, we're at the very end of our conversation, and as always, Addis, it's great chatting with you.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, and I mean, we've already booked your next appearance, which is going to be your next episode will be airing in July of next year. So at some point, and we know exactly which one that is. So I'm not going to spoil it, but
yeah, we know that one. That's lined up.
Yeah, I think pretty much. It's pretty much the next. It's anyone who knows you could either guess it was going to be either Steps or a couple of bands, and guaranteed people will automatically be able to guess which album I'm going to be talking about next time.
I think with the two that I've done, people will know exactly where the next one's coming.
Yeah, we're running out. And just to ensure people, it's not the Beatles, it's the other one, which is probably the most in-jokey thing that's probably ever happened on this on this podcast. But
not the Beatles.
I am absolutely dreading. I am really scared to listen to that album. I am genuinely really scared because I have got a feeling that I'm not going to like it. But
I've got a feeling that actually you will like it, whether you like it or not.
He says, shaking his fist at the camera.
I think you'll be surprised. You'll be pleasantly surprised with it.
Yeah, but you've got about 8 months to wait for that.
For that reaction,
but it's going to line up neatly with the 20th anniversary of that said album. Which again, I mean, if people want to guess, feel free. If people guess correctly, if people who we don't know guess correctly, then
what are you going to make T-shirts for them or something?
What we're going to do is go to a Steps gig with that band on them. which to be fair probably won't beat you actually going in your full kind of metal get up, to be fair, but
no.
So but with that, before we accidentally spoil what that album is, I was going to say thank you everyone. If people want to find you online or things that you're involved with online, where can they find you?
I don't do a lot online these days. I don't do a lot online. I don't do anything really anymore.
Yeah.
Don't find me online, it's pointless.
Yeah. Go
and find something else like Shoes for Breaks. Go and listen to Shoes for Breaks. Don't find me.
Find the band Shoes for Breaks. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll make sure I have a link to I'll link to their stuff for them to listen to. The great band from Liverpool that you pretty much helped create their album, which is Great. Yeah, listen for Shoes for Breaks. It's not Shoes for Breaks. That's not the album we're covering next time.
No, but next to that, yeah.
But that probably could be one to cover in the future. But with that, before we start talking about Shoes for Break for too long and extending the length of this episode, I was going to say thank you ever so much for coming on, Addis, and look forward to speaking to you soon.
Yes, I'll speak to you soon, buddy.
Hello everyone, this is Tony, Network Chief of We Made This. As you know, our podcast network brings together a brilliant assortment of talent who talk about all kinds of pop culture content, such as the episode you just listened to, or maybe you're just about to listen to. We're not going anywhere, but we'd love to keep the lights on for even longer if you're able to support our network on Patreon. For just £2 a month, you get your name in lights and the satisfaction of knowing you're helping us produce more great audio. And for £3 a month, you'll get your name in lights, but you'll also get access to an exclusive bi-monthly podcast from the We Made This talent pool on podcasting, pop culture, and, well, you tell us. We'll take your suggestions. For less than the price of a coffee per month, you can help keep We Made This going. Just head to patreon.com/We Made This. That's patreon.com/We Made This. And get the ball rolling. Now, back to your scheduled programming.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
We dig music.
I like it. I just like it less than Enya.
That was, ladies and gentlemen, the moment where Ian's credibility just disappeared.
No problem with that. No problem with that.
I think it's the craziest opinion we've ever had on the show.
It's definitely going to be the most fucking controversial one, I think.
Yeah, it's fine. Because, that's because I'm not moving like a tortoise full of rigor mortis, which is possibly one of the worst rhyming couplets.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast.
Yeah, and I think as we're on a Red Dwarf podcast, something we always gush about is the model work of the first six series of Red Dwarf. And that is outstanding, and it is better than this. But for 1967, the model work in this, I don't see where you could say it was anything other than good quality.
Yeah, it was perfectly acceptable, I think, for the time. It was fun, It was fun. I mean, is it the best example of the model work at the time in these films? No, but I certainly wouldn't say it's particularly shonky in any way.
Frame to frame.
With this being done by Bear McCreary, who I believe you may have interviewed, Sean.
I have. He's brilliant.
What did you make of this score?
I really like it. Bear McCreary is a fabulous horror. I mean, he started on The Walking Dead, so that's really how he got his name, with lots of very interesting noises and ambient textures and things. And on the first Happy Death Day score, he actually used he's got a young daughter, and he used her vocals and distorted them and processed them to create that creepy.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.